Hi everyone, in this video we're going to continue working with multiplying complex numbers. We started with basic operations of complex numbers last week in class, add, subtract, powers of I, and then we did a little multiplication, but we're going to continue this from the same rules that we used when we did the intro multiplication last week. All right, so last time we had the powers of I, so we knew I is equal to the square root of negative 1, but remember, we just keep it as I squared equals negative 1, I to the third equals negative I, and I to the fourth is 1. Then we did some basic multiplication last class. Just going to work through a couple of these when we multiply through. So here we have 2 times 3I, and we just did 2 times 3 because we can multiply the numbers together. And when we multiply those together, we end up with 6I, because 2 times 3 is 6, and the I has to come along. Then we had the kind like this, 5 times 3 was 15. And we had I times I, which was I squared, so that's 15I squared. But remember, I was saying that you always have to pay attention when you get an I squared or any other power of I. We don't keep I squared. I squared equals negative 1. So we replace the I squared with negative 1. So we have 15 times negative 1. And so our answer is negative 15. Then we did a few like the next one where we had to distribute the 3 through the parentheses here. We have what we call the monomial, one term times a binomial. We'll talk about that more in our next unit. But we multiply 3 with everything in parentheses. And if you have to write the 1 in front, that's fine for that imaginary 1 to make sure you multiply all the way through. So 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 1 is 3. And then we put the I at the end. All right. And lastly, we have our last problem here. 4I times 1 minus 5I. Distribute everything in the parentheses, the 4 and the I. So 4 times 1 is 4. The I comes along with it. Minus 20I squared. Okay, remember you have to replace I with squared with negative 1. So this is really going to get replaced with multiplying with negative 1. So our final answer is going to be negative 20 plus 4I. Okay? Y'all, please remember when you're writing these in complex number form, the real part goes first and the imaginary part goes last. So the part with the I should always be at the end of your problems, okay? So we did that last week. Hopefully that's kind of a refresher. Now we're going to go on to some things very similar. Remember I said when you were in Algebra 1, you did this kind of thing before. Algebra 2, same thing. We're just applying it to complex numbers. So you may remember something like this back from Algebra 1 where you had 2 sets of parentheses and you were multiplying and adding and so on, all right? So once again, we're just focusing on multiplication. So you might have done the box method or FOIL when you were in Algebra 1. Either method works when you're doing these. I'm just going to use FOIL here just to save space. But if you use the box method to multiply, that's perfectly okay. So when we multiply for 4, remember the first goes with the first. So 1 times 2. Outsides multiply with outsides. So that is going to be 1 times negative 3i, so that's negative 3i. Insides go with insides, so 2i times 2 is 4i. And last goes with last, 2i times negative 3i is negative 6i squared. Now we're just simplifying from here. Remember, I squared becomes negative 1, so you're multiplying by negative 1 here with the negative 6. So that's really 2 You have negative 3i plus 4i, which is 1i. Or just I, it's your choice. Negative 6 times negative 1 is positive 6. The 2 and the 6 are like terms, so we can combine those together. So 2 plus 6 is 8. And I'm just left with 1i or I. It's your choice on how you want to write it. That'll be my final answer. So we use the FOIL method first, outside, inside, last. When we were multiplying, or you can use the box method. I'm just using FOIL to save space here. All right. So on the next one, same thing. We're going to do the FOIL method again, distributing. That's all this is. So 5 times 5, that's our first term. So 5 and 5 gives us 25. Remember, multiplying here, not adding. Outside, so 5 times 6i is going to be 30i. Negative 6 times positive 5 is going to be negative 30i. That's inside. And last is negative 6i times positive 6i. So that's negative 36i squared. All right, once again, I squared equals negative 1. So this is going to get replaced with negative 1. And we're multiplying it by negative 1. So negative 36 times negative 1. All right. So we're going to start just simplifying now. So we got 25 in the front. Negative 30i plus minus 30i. They're going to zero out because remember, same number, different signs when you're adding / subtracting. They zero out. Negative 36 times negative 1 is positive 36. Add those numbers together. 25 plus 36 is going to be 61. All right. We have another one here that's very similar to something you should have seen in Algebra 1. Same deal, same concepts. We're just writing it as it's compact here, so we're just going to expand. So remember, anything squared means that that expression or that thing or that object or whatever times itself. So 1 plus 2i, quantity squared, just means 1 plus 2i times 1 plus 2i. And we're just going to do what you normally would do. Multiply using the FOIL method or the box method, your choice. So 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 2i is 2i. 2i times 1 is 2i. 2i times 2i is 4i squared. Remember, I squared equals negative 1. So this is really 1. We have 2i plus 2i, which is 4i. 4 times negative 1 is negative 4. We have more like terms right here. 1 minus 4 equals negative 3 plus 4i. So if you notice, all of my answers, I made sure the real part is first and then the imaginary part is last when you're doing the complex numbers. So just distributing like you did using FOIL or the box method back in Algebra 1. Last one, I believe here. Okay, so last two. So very similar. We have 3 minus 7i squared, quantity squared. So going back to what we talked about earlier, if you have the square, that means you have 3 minus 7i twice. Okay, start multiplying through. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21i. Negative 7 times 3 is negative 21i. Negative 7i times negative 7i is positive 49i squared. Because remember, a negative times a negative is a positive. I squared equals negative 1. So remember, this just means 49 times negative 1. So that means we're going to have 9 These are like terms. Negative 21 minus 21 is negative 42i. 49 times negative 1 is negative 49. Like terms, combine them in the expression here. So our final answer is negative 40 minus 42i. All right. So those were binomial multiplication. Binomial multiplication there. Last thing, you may see something like this is a bonus problem. We have 4i cubed. So the exponent there tells me how many times I have to write it. So it's going to be 4i 3 times. So here I'm just doing regular multiplication. Doing the first two, I'm going to do the third one. So 4i times 4i is 16i squared. Then I'm going to bring this one down. So now it's 16 times 4i. 16 times 4 is going to be, 16 times 4 is going to be 64. I squared times I is I cubed. And remember, we can replace that. I cubed is equal to negative I. So I'm really saying 64 times negative I. So 64 times negative I is just going to give me my final answer of negative 64i. Okay. So that's all to multiplying complex numbers. Okay, we're just focused on the binomials multiplied together. Please make sure you leave comments if you have any questions. Please subscribe to the channel if you request videos. And thanks for watching.